World War II produced the greatest generation the U.S. military has ever had. In fact, the graduating class of 1915 from West Point is regaled as a class the stars fell on, as 59 of 164 graduates would go on to attain at least a one-star rank of general. One such member of that class was Omar Bradley, who I previously made a video of, and another being Dwight D. Eisenhower. One hero who would fall into the shadow of these giants would be Jacob Devers, a 1909 graduate of West Point who had pushed for the further advancement of mechanized weapons and is truly a forgotten figure. Shout out to Michael Planchunas, who commented on my video and gave me the suggestion. There are many figures who contribute to history. Most are overlooked, some command the spotlight, and some are simply forgotten. American history is no exception, with heroes, traitors, villains, and simply those who were in the right spot at the right time. But all these figures, good or bad, would contribute to this story, our story. This is Forgotten Figures. Jacob Devers was born on September 8, 1887 in York, Pennsylvania. He would go on to attend the United States Military Academy at West Point, graduating in 1909 with fellow future four-star generals George S. Patton, William Hood Simpson, and Robert L. Eichelberger. He finished 39th out of 103 and was commissioned a second lieutenant in the field artillery. He was assigned to the 1st Battalion, 4th Mountain Artillery at Vancouver Barracks in Washington State. 3 months after joining that unit, they were moved to Fort David A. Russell, Wyoming, to rejoin the 2nd Battalion, which was returning from the Philippines. In December 1912, he was assigned to West Point to teach mathematics. 4 years later, on April 1, 1916, he would be promoted to first lieutenant and transferred to Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, as part of the newly activated 9th Field Artillery. The following year, the United States entered World War I, and on May 15th, Devers would receive promotion to captain and then major on August 5th. At the end of 1917, he would be assigned to the School of Fire at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, as an instructor. More rapid promotions continued as he became a lieutenant colonel in July and a full colonel on October 24, 1918. Plans to join the 60th Field Artillery fell through with an armistice that ended World War I, but he would be sent on a 3-month temporary duty assignment to Europe with the American Army of Occupation. While in France, he would attend the French Artillery School at Treves to study artillery and tactics. He would return to West Point as Senior Field Artillery Instructor and Commander, Field Artillery Detachment under Brigadier General Douglas MacArthur, who was the superintendent at the time. In 1925, he would go on to graduate 42nd out of 258th from the Army's Command and General Staff School at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, a class that was topped by future 5-star General and President Dwight D. Eisenhower. In 1929, he would return to Washington to serve on the staff of the Chief of Field Artillery and would attend the Army War College in 1932. On February 26, 1934, he would be promoted again to lieutenant colonel. He would then return to the United States Military Academy as Graduate Manager of Athletics, where he oversaw 18 varsity teams and was tasked with constructing new playing fields, which included moving a portion of the West Shore Railroad. All of these were completed by December 1936, and 2 years later, he earned a promotion once again to full colonel. As the Second World War loomed, he was sent to the Panama Canal Zone in August 1939 to improve the defenses. On May 1, 1940, on the recommendation of Chief of Staff of the Army, General George Marshall, Devers became the youngest brigadier general in the Army, promoted over 474 other colonels. 5 months later, he was promoted to Major General and given command of the 9th Infantry Division at Fort Bragg. While there, he not only oversaw the expansion of strength at the base, grow from 5,400 to 67,000, but also numerous construction projects from housing, facilities, and roads. 2,500 buildings and 93 miles of roads were completed in a 6-month span of time. On August 1, 1941, Devers was named Chief of the Armored Force, headquartered at Fort Knox. At the time, only 2 operational armored divisions existed, the 1st Armored at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and the 2nd Armored at Fort Knox. Views on tank divisions differed, but Devers argued, quote, "The weapon to best the tank is a better tank," unquote. Essentially, the best defense is offense. Tanks were seen as more of a diversionary weapon, not much of a fighting one, but Devers saw the opposite. They were heavy and cumbersome, like the M6 heavy tank. Devers wanted a medium tank with a 105mm howitzer, but most at the time had nothing stronger than a 37. He saw the testing of an M3 Lee, but with a small turret, it too only carried a 37, with a 75mm and a sponson, basically a side cannon. The M3 was truly a bad weapon with a ton of deficiencies. As Devers put it, it was overweight, underpowered, and insufficiently armed. What was needed was the M4 Sherman, the most widely used and produced American tank in World War II. It was easy to repair and carried a 75mm gun and a fully revolving turret, could travel roughly 120 miles, fed by 2 tanks of gasoline, and could go toe-to-toe with the German Mark II and Mark IV Panzers. Devers was a key figure in developing and manufacturing this powerful weapon. Wanting an 800 horsepower engine, he eventually settled on the Ford GAA engine at 500 horsepower and controversially rejected the General Motors 6046 diesel engine. On September 6, 1942, Devers was promoted to a lieutenant general and was tasked with expanding the fighting force of the armored units. To achieve this, he sent General Patton, commander of the 1st Armored Corps, to the Mojave Desert to establish the Desert Training Center. In 2 short years, 20 infantry and armored divisions would train here, with 5 units seeing action in the Pacific. Devers was a firm believer in the growing doctrine of combined arms, that is, infantry, artillery, armor, close air support. He carried a translation of a German manual on the Panzer Division and insisted on an updated, comprehensive Armed Force Field Manual, Tactics and Technique, FM 1710. He ordered a German manual on tank platoon tactics with a foreword by Heinz Guderian, who pioneered the Blitzkrieg and was key in panzer tank tactics, to be translated into English and issued as an armored force publication. He had an artillery headquarters to the Armored Division, where he organized the artillery into 3 battalions, each with batteries of 6 M7 Priest self-propelled tanks, and light aircraft for artillery spotting and reconnaissance were added to each division. Additionally, he supported the development of the Duckwa amphibious truck, which would prove its worth in the Allied invasion of Sicily in July 1943, and eventually the Normandy invasion in June 1944. In May of 1943, he was appointed Commander of European Theater of Operations, United States Army, with the main task of overseeing the buildup of men, material, and plans for Operation Overlord. He had a good working relationship with his British counterparts, but clashed with Eisenhower on the diversion of resources from North Africa, specifically the bomber units. He would eventually be replaced by Eisenhower for Operation Overlord, and Devers would be sent to be Commander, North African Theater of Operations, United States Army, headquartered in Algiers. In 1944, he had a unique position of being Deputy Supreme Allied Commander, Mediterranean Theater, Commanding General, NATOUSA, Commander, Advanced Detachment AFHQ, and Commanding General, 6th Army Group as of August 1st. After the D-Day landings in France, it was Devers' 6th Army Group that helped clear the southern portion of the country, freeing up the harbor entrance in Marseille and establishing rail networks to support the advancing Allied armies. His promise to Eisenhower of being able to support 10 divisions by rail by October 1st fell short, but he continued to work on it until the promise could be met. He then was tasked with clearing the Germans from the west bank of the Rhine. His army performed so well that of the 8 German divisions he faced, only 2 remained intact. The only obstacle that remained was the Colmar Pocket. Devers had favored and pushed for an offensive operation to cross the Rhine, but he was overruled by Eisenhower. Instead, his 7th Army had to hold a 126-mile front with 6 infantry and 2 armored divisions. On December 31, 1944, the Germans pushed hard against this line in Operation Nordwind. Allied forces suffered 14,000 casualties, but the Germans did not break through, and on February 5, 1945, French and American troops finally eliminated the German presence west of the Rhine. On March 8, 1945, Devers was promoted, notably against Eisenhower's wishes, to a 4-star general, remaining the 2nd highest-ranking American officer in Europe. On May 5th, German Army Group G surrendered unconditionally to Devers, and on May 8th, the remaining German forces finally surrendered to Eisenhower. In June, Devers was appointed Chief of Army Ground Forces, mainly charged with demobilization and coordinating redeployments from Europe to the Pacific. After the Japanese surrender, the military went through a fast demobilization, and on October 1st, 1946, the Army Ground Forces HQ was relocated to Fort Monroe, Virginia, and 3 years later, renamed Army Field Forces. Before his retirement, Devers was interested in the further development of helicopters and helped purchase 50 Bell 47 helicopters for $25,000 each. That's roughly $300,000 each in today's money. These would become the Bell H-13 Sioux helicopters. On September 30th, 1949, Devers was given mandatory retirement at age 62. On October 15th, 1979, Devers passed away at Walter Reed Army Medical Center and will be buried at Arlington National Cemetery. General Devers is an important figure in military history during World War II. His innovations and push for the advancement of tanks proved immeasurable. Like many, he had great foresight into what it would take to win the war and put it into practice. Even after his retirement, he lobbied the U.S. Air Force to purchase the Fairchild C-123 Provider and advocated for the Fairchild AR-15, which would become the M16 rifle. That does it for this video. Please follow me on Twitter at PastAndPresent4, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.